Okay, we're back, and this is our live again on Thursday at 8 p.m. I don't know what it is Central. Welcome, hello, hi.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Christopher. We're going to do it backwards. Usually I blab over her. Welcome, you guys. So it's 8 o'clock. If you're stopping in, like I always say, if you have any questions, drop them into the comment section. Today, we're going to talk about fermenting feed, grains, pellets, mash, whatever you're feeding your chickens, fermenting the critters' feed. I'm going to give a couple minutes here to see if anybody drops in. Well, there's Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hi.
I'm just giving a couple seconds to see if anybody else drops in today because we're going to be talking about fermentation, why we do it, how it works, and just a brief demonstration how to do the fermenting process, which is real simple. But a lot of people don't know anything about it. They're a little familiar with fermented stuff, but they don't understand the health benefit to themselves or the animals. So I'll be chatting about that in just a sec. Do you have any important things to add before I start blabbing?
I don't think so.
Chickens like fermented feed?
They do.
Yeah. And there's Eric. Hey, buddy. We're getting
Okay.
ready to talk about our how to ferment stuff.
I can explain why I decided to do it in the first place. Or
Yeah, why don't you tell everybody, why did you decide to start fermenting feed? Because I don't even know why.
So originally, when we started our homestead and got things going about 3 years ago, I was researching a lot of things at the same time, and I also was learning about how to make things more efficient, cost effective, and that is actually the first topic as to why I found out about the fermenting of the feed, is because it's actually cost effective with stretching your feed out longer. And if you were buying feed raw, like whole grains directly from a mill, then that would be a little cheaper than going to a box store. But whatever feed you have, generally, if you have like a 50-pound bag of dry feed and then you're fermenting it in servable sections, sectioned out grain per day, if you put that in the water and start the fermentation process, it essentially almost doubles your feed.
Yeah, they're going to eat less. I'll explain why, too. It's not just water.
Yeah, so he's going to get into all the nitty gritty. But I was like, in the beginning, I was like, well, that's awesome because I want to save on cost. And then right away, I started learning about all the really nutritious, beneficial reasons for doing it in the first place, the healthy probiotics and how the chickens are able to absorb the vitamins and minerals and the nutrients from each individual grain or the feed itself much better. And again, he'll get into the details, but and then it's a boost to their immune system, and then it gives you even healthier eggs. So I was really happy about having cost-effective savings in the finances, but then also having happy, healthy birds that gave us healthy eggs.
They started whistling.
Reasons.
Yeah, very happy.
Yeah.
No, they do like it.
They love it. They love it. It's essentially dinner time for them because I
You notice the difference in their feeding behavior when the fermented food is there.
Yeah, and it's a drained wet feed, so I don't leave it out there for all day, for them to eat it like all the time. I give them serving sizes per day, so they eat what they need in a day, and they're very full. Their crop is very full, and then that's it. I don't leave food out there because, of course, we don't want any rodents, but also they don't need an overabundant. They're kind of like goldfish; they just keep eating. So.
Cool.
So when I do feed them, when it's dinner time, which is early in the day, they are all excited, all of them. And
for their fermented feed.
They're excited about it because it tastes good, it smells good.
And there's something else.
So it's like giving them treats all the time, but it's healthy.
Well, it's not just a treat. So, there's Lisa. Let's talk. So fermenting the feed. I'm the science guy. I like science. I read a lot. Me and my brain are good friends. And I ferment our own food here, too, for our humans to eat. I make sauerkraut pretty regular, which is good for us. So why do we ferment the food? There's a bunch of reasons why I ferment, or why we ferment for the chickens, like she was talking about. But I want to explain what's happening so you'll understand. You have a cognitive association as to what you're doing and understand the benefit for it rather than, oh, here's some wet, smelly chicken feed. Okay? So...
There was a comment earlier. Did you see it?
Yeah, it was Mark. He said he got his lights up and he's gotten pickle his quail eggs.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. Yeah. Okay.
So, fermented foods. You guys have eaten fermented foods. What is it? Yogurt, right? Sauerkraut, like I said, kimchi. Now, these are fermented with a little bacteria called lactobacillus. There's about, 170 or so species of lactobacillus. I don't want to get too deep into the bio, unless you like bio. Just type it down in the bottom. But there's a whole bunch of different species of lactobacillus. So the one you probably heard about, are familiar with, is Lactobacillus acidophilus, okay? So these are present on the grains. These little organisms live on the grains. They're just sitting there chilling out because they can't really do much because they're not wet yet, right? Warner's there. Hey,
oh, hi.
So Lactobacillus is kind of hanging out. There's other organisms as well that are going into this fermentation, and there may even be bad ones, but there's a secret about this. So the Lactobacillus is hanging out with his fines, and maybe some fungus. Speaking of which, other brewed things like beer, that's brewed with what? Yeast. So that's a fungal brewing process, right? So we're talking a bacterial brewing process. Not that we get too deep into that, but back to the Lactobacillus. So when these guys are submerged, we're taking our grains, we're going to toss it in, and we're going to submerge it with water. This is not hard. We're just mixing it up.
Very simple.
Aggregating it and getting the stuff wet. So now the little bacteria, they're like, hey, yo, bro, we're having a party. It's wet again. They're going to go out and they're going to start having fun. Somebody sent me a message.
Hey, Stephanie.
So the bacteria are coming to life. Now, when the lactobacillus are active, they're in the water. They're going to immediately start doing, like, if you've, what do you call it, made bread before, you're going to see the yeast come alive. They come alive pretty quick, and they multiply very rapidly. Now, what these organisms are doing, which is beneficial for the birds, is a bunch of stuff. I wrote it down. I mean, I've been studying this crap a long time, but I took notes anyway. They're breaking down a lot of the, not the nutrients, but some of the compounds to make the nutrients more bioavailable. So it's kind of like pre-digestion for the critters. Even you humans, if you're eating human food that's fermented, this is extremely beneficial for your diet. I suggest you look into it. But the organisms are breaking down some of the compounds, so there's more bioavailability of nutrients that are in the grain. And it's now also preserving the food, right? It's preserving it. Why? Lactobacillus creates lactic acid, okay? Lactic acid, so it's an acidic environment. So the acid environment, nobody but stoners likes an acid environment, so the bad bacteria get the hell out. They're not coming in there. It's a nice, safe place. It's not, the food is not going to decompose, right? You're going to think, ew, it's going to rot. It doesn't. It can't. It's anaerobic. There's no air. And it's covered in acid. So nothing's rotting. It's just fermenting and fermenting. And what happens if it sits too long?
It'll get sour, right? It'll continue the breakdown process.
So how long do we usually ferment? So
what it comes down to is the temperature where you have your food fermenting. For us, I have it sitting in our basement. That's like maybe 60-degree temperature, and it takes 2 days for me. I dump the grain in the bucket, fill it with water, mix it 3 times a day. And then I move that bucket over, and the next day I start the next bucket, and then do the same thing.
So we're mixing it 3 times. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
too,
so 2 days, it's ready.
But yeah, it'll ferment. It'll ferment.
If you have it in a cold environment, some people like doing it outside, and they'll even do it all winter long because it's warm. The process is warm, but if the outside temperature is cold, it'll just take maybe 1 or 2 extra days. Yeah.
So it's a very rapid process to get the organisms in the water to break the food down to where it's fermented, and you can start feeding it to the critters, and the critters get the benefit. Now, why are we fermenting? So I hope that was a general understanding of how that process works. The bacteria are going in, they get wet, they come alive, they start breaking down compounds, they start breaking down the phytic acid, which I was telling her about. It's okay, like if you eat a lot of beans or something, you get gassy, right? That's from phytic acid. That's in plants. when it's fermented, like you are going to sprout a bean or you're going to soak beans before you cook them, the reason you do that is because it's breaking down that phytic acid, and that stuff is it's an inhibitor to enzymatic process. It stops the chemical reactions that what's supposed to be happening with some of your cells. So it's not good. It's beneficial, and it's really debatable as to how impactful it is to overall health. But that's what happens when you're, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. When you're sprouting these things or fermenting it, you're breaking down these compounds that naturally break down anyway before they either grow or they're ingested. Okay, so the benefits of doing this and why we're doing it, like she was saying earlier, the critters, you're using less food, but why? Okay, one is the volumization, right? You're adding water, so the animal's crop is going to get filled up.
Yeah, the grains, they expand.
Yeah, with the expanded grain. So your question is, well, wait a minute, if they're just eating more water, aren't they getting nutrient deficient? Aha! No, they're not. No, they're not. Actually, monitor the birds because their diet, if you're going to feed them fermented grain, the intake is going to change from the dried grain, right?
Yeah, and they're going to fill up a lot more noticeably than they would on dry grains. Because they just love it. People who buy our silkies, because I feed it to all of our birds, our chickens and our ducks. And whenever people buy our silkies, they notice that their crops are like huge, like very full, because I always feed them before they go. And then I hear like, oh, my birds they're never that full because they feed like a dry grain or something like that. But they just really like it. Yeah. But like Christopher said, you monitor them, you give them a proper serving amount, but you watch them and see how long your birds will take to eat it. I like to give them, it depends on the bird. Our black Australorps, they eat it like raptors. Like it's gone in like less than 10 minutes. It's gone. And they're huge. My silkies, they're like very, like, do-do-do, take our time, no rush. So I give them a couple hours to eat it. And then that helps me gauge, okay, that's too much food left over or not enough. They ate it fast. So I just adjust based on their behavior. So,
yeah, and the benefits of, like what I was about to tell you guys, why it's good to do this for your chickens. So if you're running a huge mega farm, you're not doing this. You're just giving pellets and like eat, because you're not really concerned about, you're doing an efficiency thing. But if you have a small flock and you're really invested in the animal's well-being, health, and quality of life, it's extremely beneficial. And it's, again, for the human, it's extremely beneficial for the human to eat the fermented foods. Because when you're introducing them to the critter, especially like a mixed grain or your pellets, whatever you're using, which is a composite of different food sources, they become more bioavailable. The bird's going to absorb the nutrients more easily and transport them to the cells more readily. Okay, and there's going to be less waste. I mean, expelling waste.
Yeah, so if you have mixed grains or several grains, then the animal eating it is going to absorb and take in more from that individual ingredient than it would if it was just plain dry. Yeah. Because of this process. Yeah. What the lactobacillus does during the fermentation process, it allows the bioabsorption of these nutrients a little more easily, and it also inhibits some of the enzyme inhibitors. Keeps them from, decreases them. You were mentioning about, well, if they're, if it seems like they may be eating a little bit less or it's expanding, so you're covering like why they're still getting their nutrition. Yeah, that's what, correct. Yeah. If it looks like they're eating less, it's probable that they are eating less volume, but being nutritionally satiated. They're getting the proper nutrition. Remember, Mother Nature is pretty clever. So she creates her creatures to function optimally at a state of equilibrium and reproduce and be healthy little animals as long as everything's taken care of. So the animals have automatic mechanisms for shut off when they're satiated for nutrients. And chickens are pigs and they're still going to eat a lot, but they're going to let you know if they're not getting nutritionally met, weight gain, weight loss, that sort of thing. So you can monitor that. That's pretty quick in a chicken. Yeah. I suppose I don't. Mine. I watch.
We have perfect chicken.
I'm very detailed, so I don't experience that too much. But
And like I forgot to mention the huge benefit of all this fermented stuff too, man. So inside, you're not a human being. You are a ecosystem because inside of you, the way you eat. You know, they say you are what you eat. That's not true. You are what you digest, right? And so the very, very important thing that is part of you is your gut, which is all the way, it starts in your mouth, digestion, when we chew.
That's a saliva process too.
Right? So this what's called the gut microbiome is extremely vitally important to overall health. I mean, you know, the hippies get crazy whenever there's a health fad like this going around. They'll hear about it, like, oh my God, this will cure for everything. No, it's a component of overall body health. You know, so this lactic acid is beneficial for your gut. It's beneficial for what's called the probiotics, like beneficial bacteria, beneficial organisms. It's beneficial for those organisms in your gut, which will keep you healthy and keep your gut healthy. And I was talking
to you. It does boost the immune system.
Yeah, it's good, obviously, because it's contributing to overall health. Like when you get sick and your doctor puts you on antibiotics, you feel pretty crappy because they're wiping out a good portion of that very delicate, beautiful gut microbiome. It really is an amazing, amazing factory. So the chicken has the same thing. The chicken is benefiting from the microbes that you're introducing into their diet, you know, and they're happy. I don't know why, but that's why. Okay, and they stay in there. They're still, you know, reproducing and aiding in digestion. But I would just also say we have a compulsion to believe that more is always better, and that's not the case. You're always seeking a state of healthy equilibrium so that everything functions in a state of equilibrium and they're healthy.
Yeah, and that goes with the serving size. And I had mentioned that it doesn't take much for them to gorge and really kind of overeat. So it is important to monitor. You don't want to just like, oh, they love it so much, so let me just give them more. Like, no, you want to, there's a balance, like Christopher just said. So if you can tell, I judge how full they look, and also how fast they eat it, and just like their overall hunger range. Like, are they super hungry when they get it, or are they, you know, that kind of, or they okay, they're taking their time eating. But because you don't want them to gain weight, like Christopher was saying, there's a balance. You don't want them to lose weight, you don't want them to gain weight. With any living animal, you know, you want it to be
state of equilibrium. Their body's designed to do something. So guys too, there's not a million people in here, but if you have questions about this, ask. We're going to show you how we do this mix. It's real simple. But I think that's really, is there anything else I wanted to add? I took notes, but like I said, I read a lot and I do all this crap all the time. So fermenting, blah, 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 blah. I think that's about it. Like I mentioned a lot of this stuff that I already read. So short version, it's good for their gut, and it's more bioavailable nutrients after it's fermented, and the chickens like it. They're happy. Okay? Now, oh, by the way, if you're wondering what kind of studies I have in my background, solid E student. Failed everything. That was terrible. I hated school. Anyhow, but I like learning. You know, this information, you know, especially if you guys have kids, teach them this stuff. Why? Because, you know, the more somebody knows about something,
the understanding,
the more they appreciate it. So if you're feeding your chickens fermented feed, but you don't know anything about it, you're like, oh, they're happy, right? But if you now know what's going on inside of them, you appreciate it a lot more and you understand it. Yeah, Mark says, are we going to show you how you do the process?
Yes.
Oh, listen to the drum roll. Yeah, look at this. Highly sophisticated, The Tonight Show style props. We got everything going on here. Strainer, bowl, water, cup. So this is not the size you're going to use most likely, and it's definitely not the size we use, right? So I'm going to let you take over.
Okay. Well, you be like the hands, and then let me talk. So I'll give you just the kind of info on what we do with our birds. Generally, when you're starting, you're going to be thinking about the serving size. The general serving size with like dry greens, which for standard chicken, what was it? Was it 25?
Oh gosh.
Ounce, something per body weight, per
pound
of body weight, 25 ounce, something. Anyway, we don't have the technical numbers on that. We have it written down somewhere else. But so you want to think about serving size for one day for your birds, how much they would eat dry. Then you put that in a container and you pour water in there. If it's warm water, then that will get the whole process kick-started faster.
Paul's never use hot water because it'll kill the bacteria, right?
You can use cold water. It's fine.
Just not boiling or real hot water.
Yeah.
Because it'll kill the organisms.
But you don't have to be paranoid. I never really check. I just turn the hot water on.
Well, hot water's okay, but if it's boiling...
Yeah. It's just hot from your faucet. And you pour the water in here. Pour the grain.
Yeah, so we're using a whole grain mix that we use.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Angela, we're taking our container and we're just going to fill it, not to the top, obviously.
How much do you want to do?
Just fill it halfway. It's demonstration purposes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So this is whole grain. You can ferment, what do you call it? The pellets?
Yeah, whatever
and the crumbles.
Food.
The difference is, okay, if you're fermenting pellets or mash, it's going to...
It's going to become like a mush.
Yeah, it's going to become I forget what they call it, a mash.
Yeah.
It's a fermented mash. Okay.
Sense.
It's safe to eat. It's fine to eat. It's just a mash. Because it's held together with lignin and some other binders. They take grains like this, they grind it up into a powder, and then reconstitute it into a pellet, and they put a binder in there. Hopefully it's a natural binder. Mm-hmm. And when it's wet, just like when it's in their gut, it'll digest and break apart. So when you're wetting pellets, they'll fall apart. We have, alfalfa pellets in here, mm-hmm. and they're going to fall apart.
Yeah.
But everything else will expand and grow. Okay, so you fill your container to whatever your feed level is. Go ahead.
And then you get your warm water or, hot to the touch. You pour it in.
Here, we have water here. I brought a spoon for mixing.
Very thorough. And then you pour in. You want it to be several inches. I'm mixing it because I want to see where the water line ends up. So the grain is sinking. It's like right here, and you see this water here. So what's going to happen is the grain down here is going to swell, and it's going to come up. And as the, what is the bubbly process?
Oh, yeah, the fermentation. They're going to produce, there's a lot of byproducts, metabolic byproducts they produce, but the gas in there is carbon dioxide.
Yeah, so there's some ingredients are floating up here. It's just the black oil sunflower seeds.
Oh, wait, pause 1 second. Hi, Shannon.
Oh,
she
hey.
just dropped in.
That's okay. Good to see you. So, why am I talking about the water level? The reason I'm talking about that and why it's important is because your grain needs to be covered so that it's not exposed to air. If it's covered by the water, that will prevent it from molding. If it's exposed to air, then it's going to start molding.
Yeah, there's mold everywhere. Everywhere you go, it's, what's that show? The Last of Us? There's fungus everywhere. So there's mold everywhere you go. It's in the air. So you see the stuff floating on top? That'll get moldy, right? So what do you got to do? By the way, the pellets, they're going to sink.
Well, what...
Go ahead. I'll show you.
So what happens is this is going to start, the process is going to start pretty rapidly. And let's say if I start doing this at like 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, then by 7 p.m. The grains will have swelled, but some of them, it's going to, like a big chunk of it is going to go up. Because of, I think, the gases and such, it pushes it up, but not all of it. Some of the grain will be on the bottom. So it's going to push it up, and then it's going to, it'll expose it to the air. And if you don't mix it, that's not good. So you want to mix it about 3 times a day.
Why is that not good?
Because then it's exposed to the air and it can mold. It will likely mold. So this floaty stuff, it's the light type of grains, the black oil sunflower seeds, they always float on the top. Don't freak out. It's okay. The important thing is mix 3 times a day. So then you just mix it. You want to mix it thoroughly because you don't want clumping. And, okay, so it's already feeling like it's swelling a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's why the amount of water you put in is important because you want to make sure, see, it's already up higher than the first time
Here it is.
from mixing it. So more water is always better than less water. So
you're not baking a cake. It's not like you're working a recipe.
Be generous with your water. I would go a good 5 or 6 inches maybe above the grain when you originally put the grain in. That way there's plenty of space for that grain to expand. So that was mixed,
it's covered with water, so nothing, the chemical process just started, right? Chemical process is the little bacteria got wet and they're starting to eat the sugars and break compounds down and ferment this stuff.
So again, this stuff is still floating, but when you mix it, it gets it wet again, and it stays moist enough, wet enough, the surface area of the stuff floating, so that it's safe. It doesn't mold. If you don't mix it, then it's an issue. But if you mix it and it's still floating, it's okay.
Okay, I have a question that would come up. I forgot to mix my grain, and I'm noticing some growth on top. Is it going to hurt my chickens?
I don't know the technical answer, but what I would do is scrape off that stuff and remix it.
So, yeah, you really shouldn't feed your chickens moldy food, old food, things that are like, you see people feeding them bad bread or stuff like this.
Yeah, don't feed them.
You shouldn't really do that because it can cause, impaction in the crop.
Oh, yeah.
They can get problems from that. So, if you're a food hoarder and you don't want to waste a damn scrap, give it to something else. Don't give it to the chickens. Give it to the other birds because it can cause issue. Go ahead.
So there's 2 reasons. If your grain swells and it's pushed up, it's just like pushing up, and it's it looks kind of firm on the surface. It's not like moving around like that. It's just all like up there. There's 2 reasons for that. Either there's not enough water. There wasn't enough water put in initially, when you put the grain in. And it swelled up all the water, it soaked up all the water, and there's really not much in there. Or it wasn't mixed soon enough. So if it wasn't mixed soon enough, just go in there and mix it good, mix it thoroughly, so there's nothing like clumped anywhere.
This is not like very, very difficult.
Not at all.
We're talking a lot to be really thorough, but it's impossible to screw this up, to be honest with you.
You just add more water.
Yeah.
And then if you stick your spoon in there, your mixing device, and you realize, oh my gosh, there's really not like water left in there. It's just like pretty dry oatmeal, like oatmeal-y. Just pour water in. Add water, and then mix it.
If you've ever cooked beans and you soak them overnight, it kind of looks like the same thing. There's no water left. They're just big fat beans now. It's like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing. They're absorbing it, and they won't have a bath. Then this is called a bath. It's an acid bath, where the lactic acid starts becoming prevalent, makes it an acidic environment. So it's an acid bath. It keeps everything nice and safe.
And you're going to see bubbles coming up. And
you'll see, Eric.
You're actually, it'll feel warm. Like as you're mixing it, if your hand gets kind of near it, you'll feel the temperature is warm because it's
a party going on.
Process.
Everybody's.
Yeah. So this would be day 1 serving. So the next day, we would do the same thing again. We would just move this one over, start a new container, put our dry grain in there, pour the water in, mix it, and then by the evening, you're going to see that the process is already started. So then that's day 2.
So you're staggering it for the fermentation time.
Yeah. So now it's day 2. This one was from yesterday. You mix it again. And if your temperature that you have it in is around like 50, 60 degrees, it should be ready. If it's warmer, then it'll definitely be ready. It's not a big deal if it's more, the process was let go longer than, some people, might wait a little longer than others. Now, if it's really cold, the temperature's really cold, it's just going to slow this process down, so it'll need a little bit more time.
Yeah, and if you sniff it when you first do this, it smells like little grains, but by tomorrow it's sour, right?
Yeah, it's going to start smelling, I guess, like the beer process.
Yeah, you're going to smell that sour breakdown. That's the gases coming out from the breakdown of all those compounds in there that the bacteria are doing. So,
and when you mix it really well, you're going to see all that. It's going to look kind of frothy, but very bubbly on the surface, and then it'll kind of calm down.
Yeah, but I think I just want to mention, like, it's intuitive for us to think if we saw this and it was, be like, ew, that's really bad. It's gone bad, right? Your intuition, you're thinking yucky, rotty stuff. But it's not rotty. Mm-hmm. It's actually the opposite of that. It's just being preserved. Mm-hmm. So it's just a really neat thing. And then you find out about it. It's like, oh, wow, that's actually like a super chicken food. It's a superfood for chickens.
So it can be left too long. Where it's not necessarily bad, the grain itself, like gone bad.
It won't make an animal sick.
It's just that the chickens, it'll go from sweet, to them it's sweet. It'll go from sweet to like soury, and then they're just like, I'm turning my nose up to this. This is not what I had yesterday.
Yeah, it'll get too sour for them, and they won't eat it if it's fermented too long.
So if that happens, then just cut off a day. Just process it or feed it to them. A day or two.
So again, if somebody's coming in late, how many days do we ferment this in a regular warm?
Generally, it's about 2 days.
2 days.
Yeah. So now we're going to go ahead.
So we're fast forwarding to 2 days from now. We've mixed it a few times. So we mixed it a few times.
I always like to mix it right before I do.
So let me show them. If you guys saw when we first poured this, take a look at how it's already expanded.
And again, that's why it's important to have plenty of water. So I would say.
So we filled this thing up to about here with grains, I guess.
Yeah, I would say I did not add enough water. With the way this is going, I probably should have put the water all the way up to here.
Yeah, but you could add it.
I could add it now. I could, even if it was all up, I could add it then.
I'll have drunk, stumbling chickens. I would probably be eating the chicken food too, but it doesn't make it, there's no alcohols being produced. It's just, it's not, it's like, I wonder if you can make this into alcoholic chicken wine. That would, oh man, well, that's a whole business.
That might be a new thing.
I thought of that.
So, now we're fast forwarding.
It smells like beer, though.
It will. To serving time to prepare. I like to mix one last time before, and again, there should be more water in here. But
yeah, but now remember too, we're about to strain this, so we're not straining water anymore. This is no longer water. This is lactic acid, water,
it should be like a tan color,
and trillions of bacteria.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this is like a super drink for the chickens.
So I like to mix it first because just to keep it from being clumpy or whatever before I pour it, because we're going to pour it out and strain it. So things that you would need is a bucket or a container that's
this
large
is for
enough,
demonstration purposes, people.
Large enough for the fluid to go into. And you want a strainer. I have a real big one that fits on top of a 5-gallon bucket that is small. That's small enough to prevent any of your ingredients from going through. If you're fermenting like a pelleted or crumble feed that's going to become a mash, I would definitely go with the fine wire,
something really fine.
because this will stop it from going through. So then you just place your thing on
Even
the
with
bucket.
the mash, you're going to get some residue coming through.
It not too much. I did actually do that a year or so ago. I tried it, and
you used a fine sieve.
Mm-hmm.
So we used a fine sieve.
But I did notice that it takes longer for it to drain, for sure. So then we go ahead and...
So we're doing the whole grains, not the pellets or the mashed stuff. But you can do those things. Mm-hmm. You can ferment them. Mm-hmm. Right? So we're going to strain everything. I don't want to spill this everywhere like an idiot.
Do you want to...
No.
Okay.
I'm going to get it out of there. So
you can have a spoon.
This is supposed to be 2 days. Obviously, it was only a few minutes. But then she would scrape out some of the residue and we strained it. Let me get rid of that.
Get rid of what? Oh.
My jar. So we're strained.
What I do, because I'm feeding a lot of chickens, I usually have a lot that's being strained. So I dump my grain into the strainer, and then I walk around and do other tasks and let it strain for, like 15 minutes or so. It just depends on how much you're doing. And yeah, pretty much, I mean, you're feeding your birds this, not the fluid.
I want to show them the leftover water.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So, just sit on this piece of water.
Well, it can actually sit on this
jar. Okay, cool. So we're going to show you the water. So like I said, in a couple days after you strain this, you have like a chemical soup, which is beneficial. You don't throw it away, right?
No. Well, for the most part, you don't.
You know, most part. If you've been using the same water, so you strain the water and you're going to use it again for your next mix.
Because you have all your live organisms in there.
Yeah, so this is going to be, yeast. If this was fermented properly, it would be full of the beneficial bacteria, the lactobacillus species would be all in here, as well as the lactic acid. And you would add this to one of your new mixes.
Yeah, so what you would do is with your fresh new container of food, of grain, dry grain that you pour into your new container, you pour this into there. And that's going to kickstart the whole process faster, and it's already got all that really healthy, good, the organisms.
Lactobacillus.
in there present to do their job. Okay. And then you add your extra water.
Yeah, there's other organisms in there too that are beneficial. But the cool thing is the environment, the way nature works, it's really, I love this stuff. So it's really beautiful. The environment, the acidic environment of our gut is not happy for bad bacteria, especially when it's operating well. And this lactic acid is very, very good for the beneficial bacteria in the animal.
Mm-hmm. So now it's strained. You can see it's just a little bit drippy. And then you simply serve it into whatever container. I usually put it in a container and then take it out to their bowls outside. But however you feed your chickens or your ducks, then you serve them. And then they're going to be happy birds.
Yeah, man, they'll go crazy for this stuff. They do, don't they?
Yeah,
do it as do it as a test. Like if you don't want to commit to the thing, like start a whole new feeding program, just do it once.
Or do a small
small batch, and see how they react to it.
So the
one more thing too. If you have chickens that are picky and they're not eating one thing out of the other things, they're like picky through the mix. They'll eat the whole mix here.
Yeah, what they will do with the mixed grains is they'll pick what they like first, but they will just methodically go through the ingredients and eat all of it. Like they'll eat all of it, but they eat what they like first. So yeah, they don't leave anything because it's just all very yummy. Yeah. So the mix or this liquid I had mentioned, for the most part, you keep it.
The strained, water and lactic acid.
And you're going to get used to the way it smells. It definitely has its own scent. And it's just part of the process.
Well, if you have a bunch of smelly animals, this is nothing.
Yeah. You'll notice if it smells, I don't know, like extra soury, or it just suddenly just smells different.
If it smells bad to you, like it's gone sour.
Yes, you can tell. It smells like, that doesn't smell.
Not rocket science.
Yeah, then just dump it and start with over. Just water. Because it's just water is all you're using. But you can also just use like a small amount of it. I usually dump.
Let me get something too. Keep talking. I want to show them something.
I usually dump all of it into my new bucket and then add the water to top it off. Let's see. And then I'm trying to think about like, well, how do I know if my grain or my feed is bad, if it went too long? If you're using mixed grains, you'll notice the main thing is, how does it smell? Does it smell fresh and normal, that yeasty smell? But then you'll also see, if it's mixed grains, you'll also start to see some of the grains will look like they're breaking down like more. The color of the grain might change, and you'll, it's just like food. You can tell, well, that went too long. That piece of fruit or whatever is obviously bad because now it's mushy and it's dark colored or whatever. It doesn't.
Bob has a question. Do we feed this to chickens as well? To the chicks, to the babies.
Oh, no. So here's the thing. You saw the whole process. If you have, it depends on how many birds you're feeding. That will affect how much of this you're doing. So there's always a give and take. The con, I guess you could call it the sacrifice with this, is the process of straining it and getting it ready to give to your birds, because it takes a little bit of time. Yeah. If you're doing a little bit of feed, no big deal. But I do a lot, so we feed all of our silkies this, our black australorps this, we feed our ducks, but I don't feed the chicks because we work with whole grains. That would be a different focus for me to make sure we get like a ground mix that's small enough for the chicks. It would be good for the chicks.
Yeah, you can have the grains ground, like we work with a mill.
But
So they would do that.
chicks do need to have feed available at all times because they're just they need to be able to eat when they're hungry, and they're in a growing state, and you don't really want this sitting around just sitting
in the air,
not being eaten, because then it could go bad.
Yeah.
So you serve them a serving size for them to consume within that day.
It's the same thing like if they want to feed it to the quail. You can do that, but the quail want food all the time, so you don't want to leave a lump of wet food that's not going to be getting eaten. I mean, if you have had food get exposed to moisture and it starts to go bad because the air can get to it.
So you can do it in addition to your dry grain to give them all those added benefits of being of the probiotics and such. You can give them some of the feed that way, like the quail, for example. I don't do it with the quail because it just takes too long. We have a lot of quail.
Yeah.
But
I want to show them this.
Yeah.
This how serious I take this fermenting. It's crazy. You see this? I just made this the other day. It's, what do we call this? Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut, same kind of, it's sauerkrauty. Same kind of process that we just did here. It's just water. And actually the water for the sauerkraut comes from the cabbage. I want to show you the gas if I can, because I haven't, you see it coming out? Well, you kind of see it. So that's the carbon dioxide, and you're supposed to push this down. You can see the water coming out.
Yeah, all those bubbles.
I eat this goop all the time. So does she. It's really good for you, and it's really easy to make. But here's the trick, people. If you do eat fermented foods, actually go, look this up. Read about it. It's really interesting stuff. Look at the YouTube. People buy pasteurized fermented foods thinking they're getting the benefits, but the bacteria are dead. The nutrients are still there and bioavailable. But those bacteria that are really good for you, they get killed in the heat, so you don't want to heat any of that stuff up. But yeah, man, we ferment everything. Fermented chicken food, sourdough bread, that's a fermented product. Sourdough bread, again, it's the same thing. A lot of the products that cause bloating and gas are going to be broken down through that fermentation process if it's a true sourdough. So it's neat stuff. If you're bored, go talk to Google for a few hours. They'll teach you all kinds of stuff about it too.
Of course, all of the really good things that we discussed earlier in the video about why you would do this is, good for their health, the chicken's health, and they get, their eggs are going to be healthy. You're eating healthy eggs. If you're processing any of your birds for meat, then you're they're eating really well. But the important things about the process, again, very simple, is add more water than you think, mix it 3 times a day thoroughly, and that's it. You pour it when you're going to serve it, drain it, and then serve.
Yep. And then you have happy chickens, and then you got a new task to do.
And I would recommend covering it because it's sweet and it's going to attract insects. So just cover it wherever you have it. If you have it outside, or if you have it down in your basement where insects may get to it, just put a simple cover on top. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, your birds will like the bugs if you mix them in, but if you don't want bugs. Yeah.
I think that was good. I mean, does that wrap that up? I think that does. It's simple stuff. It's really, really complex and magnificent science if you want to go into the deep dive and look into this. It's really, really fantastic. But the other reason I want to show you guys this too is to encourage you to take care of your own health. All right. If you're taking care of your chickens, take care of yourself. Eat well, sleep, drink your water, get your exercise, lay off the booze and smokes as much as you can, and take care of your mental well-being. I guess that's about that. Appreciate you coming in. Do you have any last final salutations?
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments that you do want to leave after you've seen this video or after this has been finished and isn't live anymore, please leave the comments and we'll see them later and we'll say things.
Do some Zumba.
Zumba. He's the extrovert. No problem over here.
I don't mind.
You guys should get together.
Yeah. Let's do. We're gonna do a internet Zumba. What do they call it? Co-creator thingy. Yeah.
You and Shannon.
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Middle-aged Zumba guy and young Miss Shannon. Make a good team.
But yeah, thank you guys for your comments and your questions. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, that's it. Just leave comments after the fact if you guys want to.
So long. It's all long goodbyes. Goodbye, my friends.
Bye.